So, yeah. That plan that was perfectly simple and was impossible to muck up, well, let's just say it got mucked up. Hey folks, MasakoX here. And with this story, it's best to think of it as one of those narratives which makes the most logical sense. Now, back in the day of the original Dragon Ball series, there were very big and very noticeable clues that this outcome was probably or possibly going to happen, or at the very least, it was certainly in the realms of plausibility. Goku and Bulma, a couple. Two of the biggest characters in that series, and people who ended up being very close friends. But as they got older, they did start to have some sort of feelings for one another. In fact, there were a couple of points and visual cues where Bulma even found Goku attractive. But alas, the plot, as we know, ultimately, did not go in her favour. But what if it did? What if Bulma got the chance to have Goku as her beau? Well, this is an example of that story. Now, in theory, this coupling is a very good one. Bulma is a very independent soul who can handle Goku's long bouts of training and being away, his haphazard way of living life, as well as his then different nature to humans. She understood him from a very young age, much more so than Chi-Chi could, and she therefore adapted herself around him, so she would be more caring and understanding than, of course, Goku's wife from the actual original would be, who can be seen as trying to sort of panel beat Goku into something that she wanted from him, but then ultimately gave up on in Super because it never comes up, and thusly resigning herself to maybe trying some sort of a compromise. Bulma though, she got the message and rolled with it here. But that doesn't mean though that it was easy. For long-term viewers of this series, you know very well that Bulma had been very much pushed to her limit, great lengths in fact, by Goku, and then Gohan when he became of age. But this time, I think Goku's really pushed it too far to the point where things might be troubling again. At least Chi-Chi never rocked the boat. In the last part, Babidi had been slain and Majin Buu had been unleashed, this time as a rather loose cannon, and with no sign of being controlled or controllable. He was a free spirit seemingly, and therefore nobody knew exactly what he would do, or what they would do to stop him. Not even the Supreme Kai knew. But this time, he decided to show some initiative and try, based on his memories, and approached Buu like he were an infant. Some of the Grand Supreme Kai's playful nature and aura still within the genie. Well, I mean, that's what he hoped. But thankfully it worked. Working with Goku and a reluctant Gohan and Vegeta, they were able to satiate Buu's desire for play, long enough for Goku to learn the Mathaba from Master Roshi, and then trick Buu into letting him be sealed through the art of feeding him cookies. Lots and lots of cookies. Goku and the other Saiyans chose to omit certain things from their plan, not only to Shin, but also to the others, including Bulma, just for the sake of getting a good fight later. But then, this was too easy. But sometimes, the easy way out is the best way out. With the jar containing the now sealed away Majin Buu in their hands, as well as the Supreme Kai gone from Earth, things were looking rather peachy for the crew. Everything was sorted. As far as they were concerned, they had managed to press the figurative pause button on this fight with Majin Buu. They gave off the impression though that they had ended the fight altogether, wholesale. But no, to them, this was going to continue, just at a later date. Goku knew that having Buu still being physically present in this world wasn't the best thing though, but his intentions weren't to fully deceive people, no. But unfortunately to us, the actions screamed that to anyone who wasn't a Saiyan. So what now? How long do we train for until we can finish this creature off once and for all? Gohan thought about this. It was hard to say. We needed to go all out just to keep up with him right now. So, no less than a year or two? Goku then mused about maybe using the Room of Spirit and Time to make it happen sooner. But then Vegeta shoots that down by saying there is no rush to use it since Buu's now locked away in the Mathaba jar, and it's not something to use the Room of Spirit and Time lightly as it's quite arduous in there. The real question is, where do we store this thing? Vegeta points to the jar. Goku waves that aside, saying, oh, he can just hide it in the vaults of Capsule Corp. Only a few people know the access code to get in there, and nobody other than the three present would actually know what exactly was the significance of this jar, so no biggie. With that, Goku and Gohan head back to West City to hide the jar in the vault and train. Some time passes and peace has been restored, apparently. The little interlude of Majin Buu was a rather perplexing affair to many of the Dragon team, but it was really to them just a blip. Most of them paid not much more mind to it, seeing as the menace had been dealt with in a rather quite impressive and strategic way. Roshi was in fact very pleased to see that his technique of the Martha was being used, and it hadn't harmed or killed Goku in the process. He was rather glowing of his pupil, stating that, oh, he'd come a long way since they had first met all those years ago. Bulma too was very impressed to see that her husband had matured and come up with such a clever plan all on his own. Goku, though, had the slightest tinge of guilt at hearing this. Little did anyone else know that Buu was not only still here on Earth, but he was resting deep in the bowels of Capture Corp, right under their feet. In that time also, Bulma had revealed to everyone that she and Goku were expecting another child, the former sensing that she wanted at least one more kid now that Gohan was a grown man and moving into the realm of independence as well as the job market. Now everyone was jubilant to hear this, but nobody knew the gender of the baby, and Bulma decided to keep it that way. Bulma knew a lot of things in her life, so this was one thing that she chose not to know about, at least for a while. Having heard this, now feeling desperately fraught with remorse, Goku asked his son to step up their training. They needed to get this over with and stop Buu properly. Things had changed. With Bulma pregnant, Goku couldn't handle the burden of hiding this thing from everybody anymore. Gohan also felt a similar way, but they had to use the Room of Spirit in time, to which they spent a day inside. They needed to get this over with quick, regardless of what Vegeta said. But speaking of Vegeta, he could sense that the two of them had indeed entered, and so he began to intensify his own regime from the outside, sensing that, oh, maybe the time was approaching that Buu was going to be released, and for them to finish him off as a trio. I mean, of course, ideally he'd like to be the sole dispatcher of that infuriating pink blob, but hey, anything's better than nothing. With Bulma completely none the wiser, Goku and Gohan took the jar from the vault containing Buu and headed for the lookout. Vegeta had arrived also, and the three of them looked to the door that led to the Room of Spirit and Time. Dende was a little perplexed as to why all three of them were here during peacetime. You can't all enter at once, you know. The room isn't equipped for such things. Vegeta then snapped at Dende, looking rather jittery in fact, very unlike him. Surely your precious cosmic force or whatever can handle it, right? Dende then muttered to himself, fraught and really scared, trying to do his best just to nod calmly, but it was very difficult. Strange though. Vegeta was acting more irrationally than usual. But with that concern pushed to the side, for the moment, the trio entered the room with the jar regardless of the risk. Gohan had mused that releasing Buu inside the room would be the best bet, since energy couldn't be sensed from the outside once they were inside, since it was another plane of reality and all, and not Earth. Nobody needs to know. The trio exited the courtyard of the temporal domain and out into the white void. With trepidation, Goku removed the talisman seal from the jar and placed it on the ground. The three of them got ready to expect the large pink mass to escape from it, having no clue what was going on. Like time had stood still, he hadn't noticed anything happening. Instead of the fat, jovial Buu exiting the jar like they thought, there was a very different creature. They hadn't expected this. It was a taller figure, a much darker, more sinister looking one. He had no nose, his antenna was slicked back, and he had black and red eyes which looked absolutely evil. Nothing like the little slits or small white droplets of the more rotund version of Buu. This was a whole other beast. The energy, too, was far more venomous. The creature looked to them, sparks flying from the surface of it. You tricked Buu. This was still Buu? With no time to lose though, Vegeta rushed forward and began to show off his gains, thinking that would be enough to at least damage Buu significantly, but no, not even close. This Buu had an answer to every attack from the prince, and Vegeta was left shell-shocked. How? How could this thing get stronger in there? Not stronger. Angry. Buu kicked Vegeta into the side of the main building, sending rubble everywhere. Gohan and Goku were left terrified. This wasn't supposed to happen! How could this be? Goku then desperately tried to rack his brains, trying to understand why Buu's appearance and energy could have changed so drastically whilst he was sealed away. How was this possible? Then it hit him. Something he then recalled Roshi explaining to him back when King Piccolo had been released from his rice cooker prison back in the day. Just because Piccolo had been locked up didn't mean that time for him stood still. It was a prison, not a stasis chamber. Time did not stand still in there. Buu could have had time to fester on what had occurred. Goku tricking him, violating his trust, being deceived. No food. The look of realization on Goku's face was something Buu found utterly satisfying. Buu walked calmly up to Goku and placed his hands on his shoulders. Gohan ready to defend his father in case.
You understand now. Tricking Buu. Big mistake. Buu had time to think about what you had done. All that time alone again, after being set free. Without light, without fun, without even food!
He squeezed Goku's shoulders harder.
The bad part of me rose to the surface and consumed the niceness of Buu. All that remains is anger. Buu, want to crush you.
He squeezed harder again, this time causing pain for Goku. Gohan had no choice, he had to rush to help his father. But Buu's tendril extended and slapped Gohan out of the way. Buu wasn't done yet expressing his vitriol.
Now, Buu wished to cause pain, starting with you.
Without another thought, Gohan blasted the door to the room of spirit and time, thusly and supposedly removing any connection to the outside world. Vegeta screamed at Gohan for such a brash and idiotic decision.
What are you doing, boy? That's our only way out of there!
We can't let Buu go.
What? Let Buu go where?
Gohan stood firm and smirked. You're trapped, Buu, from one prison to another. You're stuck with us for all eternity. That door back there was the only way out. You're not going anywhere. The young man had to let the pain of being imprisoned here forever be suppressed for the moment. Because of their combined Saiyan pride, they had taken what was essentially a very easy task, just keeping the jar away, and made it into another unnecessary mess to clean up. Buu let go of Goku and collapsed to the floor, looking positively desperate. He was shaking with rage, fear, and frustration. He didn't know what to do, hearing that he'd been locked away for a third time. He started to stomp around the area, screaming at nobody in particular, too busy with his own conundrum to beat up the Saiyans that laid before him. Vegeta was starting to actually get impatient.
Why don't we just finish him off right now and be done with it?
Goku ignored the prince, trying to figure out what Buu was doing. He was unpredictable. They had to figure it out. Then he yelled. Buu yelled with every fibre of his being, and something was happening. Little white cracks and sparks were forming in midair, almost as if something was breaking up that they couldn't see. Buu's yelling got louder and louder. The Saiyans had to cover their ears, in fact, and seconds later, reality broke. From it, the lookout and Earth could be seen from the other side. Having stunned himself into silence, Buu then understood what he had done, and then laughed with unbridled joy. He had done it. He had outsmarted the Saiyans. He was free. Without a moment to lose, he rushed forward and out of sight. The Saiyans desperately had to follow in hot pursuit. Down on Earth, everyone sensed the three Saiyans return, but then a familiar energy resurfaced. One that they thought was long gone. Buu was back? How? Piccolo cursed under his breath.
Damn it, Goku. You actually went ahead and did it.
It turns out he had heard everything from spying on Vegeta. It's always Vegeta. Vegeta would train on his own, muttering about defeating Buu, where the jar was, the whole thing. It had been leaked from the prince's own personal jabbering from his own little princely mouth. Piccolo had been keeping an eye on the prince in case he had any margin left in him, but had stumbled upon something else entirely. He was glad that he actually went to go and investigate. The Dragon team panicked, but Buu was so fast at causing mayhem, devastation and destruction that a lot of them had barely any time to act. Buu was non-stop. He was laughing maniacally as he flew around the world, killing people, destroying cities, landmarks, the whole shebang. He had been bottled up against his will too often, betrayed by people he thought were friends or playmates. Oh, he was going to enjoy this. By the time Goku, Gohan and Vegeta had gotten back to Capsule Corp to check on Bulma, they were met with a very ashen-faced engineer standing next to Piccolo. She had heard the whole thing. Piccolo looked at the three with a grim expression himself.
So, your little plaything got loose. You've done some questionable things in your time, Goku, but this is probably the worst.
Bulma was shaking with fury. I don't know what hurts more. The fact that you hid this from me? The fact that you thought Buu's power was trivial? Or the fact that you were all in on it, playing with our lives as if they were mere toys? She turned to face Goku, maddening tears brimming in her eyes. Goku tried to explain this away, but none of this resonated with her. It was selfish, there was no escaping it. Not even Gohan could worm his way out of this, and he was the smartest one of all. Gohan, I taught you better than this. How could you let yourself be swayed by such base desires? But before Gohan could reply to this, Bulma hushed him. Don't. I know exactly what this is about. You're saying pride got in the way, didn't it? It's always that blasted pride. Bulma turned away. Fix this. Now. Goku then asked if they did fix this, would this make things better? But she didn't reply. She just walked away, unsure of what would happen next. Piccolo stood there and remained stoic.
Can you? Can we what? Grumbled Vegeta. Fix this. You've been training, right? Or is this pest something different altogether? Something you didn't anticipate?
But before any of them could answer, a small Kai had arrived on the planet, looking just as furious as Bulma had been. And that's where we're going to be leaving things for right now. So what do you folks think? Can the trio fix this Buu problem? Or is this the end of the world as we know it? Leave a comment below and let's get this discussion going. And I shall see you in the next video. Catch you later.